a little bit of DMC, the reboot. That was the very first one I ever played.
Yeah, you told me about that. With depending on how you like to refer to him, either Donté or in my favorite Dino. That's Donté in name only. Dino.
Oh yes, I like Donté.
So Donté or Dino is utterly charmless, and he's kind of a Weisenheimer. Nobody really likes him, but it was discovered some time ago that if you play the game with the Spanish language option and put in English subtitles, it becomes vastly more charismatic because it seems more like some kind of Mexican soap opera. So I introduce to you Donté, el exterminador de demonios.
Fallaste. Mi nombre, por cierto, es Dante.
¿Dante?
Sí, pero llámame Dante, el exterminador de demonios. ¿A que suena bien?
Fallaste.
The mariachi is very important.
My daughter is Donté. That's great. So, Lawrence, where do you want to start?
I think we should start with the follow-up, Lee.
That makes perfect sense.
Specifically, I would like to start with the follow-up that left my balls exposed for all to see, which was the what turns out to be utterly spurious rumors that I spread last week about Neil Druckmann and his ousting of Amy Hennig from Naughty Dog.
Hey, to be clear, you were straight up on the alleged side of that.
I said the magic word.
Yeah.
I said the magic word, which means that I'm free from all consequences.
Absolutely.
So the source of this totally unfounded rumor that you would have to be some kind of rumor monger to spread without checking is that on IGN in March 5th, 2014, I believe a article by, I think it was Mark Dyer? Mitch Dyer.
Mitch Dyer, yeah.
Yes, he released an article that suggested that the reason why Amy Hennig was leaving Naughty Dog from Greener Pastures was in fact because she had been ousted by Neil Druckmann and another executive called Straley, I think.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. Yeah, an excellent follow-up on our second episode. On the very first episode, after it released, nearly a day had passed before it came out that IGN had known that was untrue, or at the very least an unsubstantiated rumor, and had instructed Mitch Dyer to include it in the article anyway. So apologies, Neil Druckmann. You did not oust Amy Hennig from the company, as far as we are aware. You are, however, still pretentious, and you crunch your workers, so fuck you.
Yeah. Still lots of other alleged crap to deal with. No better way to start off episode 2 follow-up than to backtrack.
Apologize. Yeah.
For legal reasons. Also on follow-up, mildly interesting. Well, I was going to say the Tina Amini thing, but I actually don't think it's remotely interesting enough.
I don't even know who that is, so I can be the Watson to your Sherlock as you explain this for my benefit, and also the audience's.
All right, okay. You've teed me up nicely, so I can do this. Tina Amini was one of the article writers in my Kotaku dragging efforts last week. But Tina Amini was actually the one in the good camp, the one who made the sort of parody of what Kotaku were talking about at the time. And in the whole news fallout, which we might get to, about IGN and Mitch Dyer and so on, that led us to apologize to Neil Druckmann for one count.
Mm-hmm. The first of many, I'm sure.
The first of many. I also found out that Tina Amini, who previously mentioned, is now the editor-in-chief at IGN and all that. And she was being praised for being generally sound and good at her job by Mitch Dyer, I think. I'm going to take all that out. That sounds alleged as fuck. She might be terrible at her job.
We wouldn't want to unwarrantedly compliment somebody. Yeah.
Yeah, falsely praise piece. Yeah, exactly. I'm thinking less about that and more about maybe because Mitch Dyer is now a writer at EA because he's been the guy from Star Wars Battlefront 2 and Star Wars Squadrons. He's been a writer for those. Who also, this all ties in really neatly because that's another in this mutual drag session. It turns out unknowingly I had also already previously dragged Mitch Tyre, but it was in episode 0, so nobody ever got to hear it. But I did a small rant about Star Wars Battlefront 2, which I dipped my toe into and backed the fuck out of because the writing was so terrible. And primarily because the writing was so terrible, not even the gameplay. And now I just want to go on the record and just to be clear, I think Mitch Tyre's writing for Battlefront 2 was awful.
There was nobody forcing you to write that shit down, was there, boyo? This one's all on you.
Yeah, Dan, you can't even allege it because it's an opinion. And you know, he might be a really good writer. I'm sure his IGN stuff was good when he wasn't being fucking, bullied into making spurious lies against unsuspecting individuals. But, I mean, in terms of writing generals barking back and forth in Battlefront 2, I have to say I wasn't very impressed. And you know what? I didn't say this about Squadrons, but I didn't like the dialogue in the trailer, and it reminded me of Battlefront 2, and I got like fucking vibes from it. And then to find out in his Twitter mantle that he also wrote Squadrons, I was like, oh, that's not a good sign, man. So I guess that's follow-up, because we were also talking quite positively about Squadrons last week.
Although it should be said, we were talking positively about everything except the writing.
Yes, that very much could go either way. I hope he's learned some lessons from what must have been a very difficult production on Battlefront 2. So anyway, it was interesting to see all these names tying up on what has amounted to 2 weeks of digging holes for ourselves. That all these people happen to not only know each other, but have worked or interconnected with each other in one level or another. Mm-hmm. Super, super, super to hear. Last thing I can think of in follow-up is Crash Bandicoot 4 got its trailer. We talked a little bit about Crash Bandicoot 4. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it yet. I'm going to look at it now while you talk.
All right.
Was my unwarranted pessimism from last week actually entirely warranted?
Yeah, the whole thing is it's so kind of muddy that it's hard to say anything at the moment, especially based on the trailer. I can say that the gameplay that we saw did look like a return to the old form in that the levels are more like linear platforming areas rather than big expansive things that later games chose to do, and it seems to be a more direct carrying on of the style of the original trilogy,
which is probably the way to go if you ask me. Having
played all those other Crash Bandicoot games, I can tell you there's no reason to iterate here. There is absolutely no reason. The Crash Bandicoot games still are fun games to play now. And all you need to do, there are some franchises where you need to iterate. You need to fucking fight to survive. Your ideas look more glorious and exciting in different formats as time progresses. Crash Bandicoot isn't one of those IP. He's not one of those franchises. He is an old school 3D platformer on a 2D-ish plane, and that works, and nothing else. None of the other 20 years of work has actually mattered all that much in the grand scheme of things. So just go back. Forget about it. Do the Sonic Mania thing. Stick with what works. And it seems like they're doing that, but it does have hints of the writing and then the sort of quirks of the later Crash Bandicoot games. And while I never hated all that stuff, I was always a bit mixed on it. I kind of preferred the sort of campy straightness that the original Crash Bandicoots played for. There was something a little more charming about that than the sort of nudge nudge wink wink comedy stylings of Crash Bandicoot that the later games became known for. It wouldn't be a bad thing by any stretch, but it certainly now has sort of, I feel like I need to sort of step down a little bit from Crash 4 and see how it works out. Could be great, or it could be... in my head, when I heard the title and I saw the box art, I, like all idiots on the internet, do immediately hype it to be the thing I want. And then when I see that they've designed a game with intentions and they have human beings who want to do stuff behind this, I step back slightly.
So what you're saying is it is no longer, once you see the trailer, the romanticized ideal of what you were imagining?
Yeah, exactly. 100% I fell into this pitfall here. Now I have to measure myself and realize Crash Bandicoot 4 could be just as flawed as any game that I've not played through. You know?
It could be Sonic 4 all over again.
It could be Sonic Forces all over again.
You know, I'm still playing Hyper Light Drifter, which is good. Although it did occur in the
You promised you would have it done.
I did promise that, didn't I?
Yeah, you said it'd be like 1 hour and it'd be packed up or something along those lines. A couple of hours on Sunday and bam, Hyper Light Drifter.
Well, I'm very close to finishing it, but alas, I have not, because it did the Fez thing where it's like, hey, there's a whole bunch more secrets than you thought, huh?
Okay.
I should, no, and I am committing to this. There you go, I'm making a promise, Lee. I will have it finished by next week, because I am very close to the end, and I have adjusted my time prediction capabilities accordingly.
Having learned the secrets of the game. Just to be clear, have you actually got to the end of the narrative of this, and it's now sort of asking you to go back and expand a little bit, or is it all on the way to the finale?
So the nature of the beast is, I don't know.
Okay.
Because basically, minor spoilers for this game. What happens is it's very much like Shadow of the Colossus, where you've got this big map. You've got the center of the map where you start, a north, west, east, and south. You have to get 4 MacGuffins in the north, 4 MacGuffins in the south, and 4 in the west, and 4 in the east. Mm-hmm. But as it turns out, there's actually 8 per quadrant. And the game offers you the option of activating whatever endgame situation is after you've gotten the 4 from each quadrant. But now that I know there's 8, I suspect that if I do it now, it will result in some kind of bad end.
Yeah, neutral end at the very least.
Mm-hmm, some kind of Castlevania, you only got 70% of the map complete nonsense. I want to finish this game and then put it up on the digital shelf and go, that's me. I beat Hyper Light Drifter. Although it did occur to me last week that I said, this is a good game, it looks and sounds very good, that I basically said very, very little about it.
Yes, that's right. We then went quickly into a conversation about Solar Ash.
It was a real politician's answer.
So, Lawrence, how is Hyper Light Drifter?
Well,
if I could say it properly, I mean...
If I were to engage in a little bit of marketing talk, sort of loosey-goosey, vague marketing talk, would you know what I meant if I said that a game felt tight?
Yeah, I think that's the hip way of saying responsive.
Mm-hmm, yeah, it's responsive. Like, it expects you to make, perhaps not frame perfect, but very tight platforming and combat input, and it has the capabilities to accept those.
Oh, cool. You see, this is where it blurs in with the terminology for precise. So maybe tight's like an amalgamation of responsive and precise.
Yeah, I suppose tight would describe how it feels rather than what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Hyper Light Drifter, it feels very tight. It looks very crisp. It's got a pixel art aesthetic. It's got like a sort of neon pixel art aesthetic. Mm-hmm. They do a lot with the pixel art. They take it places. It
has dawned on me that this game is like 5 years old. So some people will be sitting here listening to you have a conversation about a game that we're like, yeah, we know, Lawrence. That's why they're doing a big budget sequel to it. It's a very popular, very memorable, pretty 2D game. But I have never played it, so this is for me, audience.
I'm going to hit you with the real marketing useless terminology. It's kind of like Dark Souls in that it has a very minimalist sort of approach to storytelling where you get contextual clues based on like ruins and there's a bunch of skeletons here and there's the skeleton of what appears to be a titan that died in some kind of great war, but it doesn't linger upon this. You just have to draw conclusions for yourself. It is very much like Shadow of the Colossus in that you have a map, you have very vaguely defined objectives, and then it just slaps you on the rear and goes, well, off you go. I'm not going to speak any more about it until I've completed it, because then I'll have a bit more to say, but there is one thing I heard that might be of interest, which is that apparently in the vein of the Castlevania, there's going to be a Netflix animated series about Hyper Light Drifter, which surprised me a great deal.
It's been a weird week for games cashing in on Netflix, because I heard Cuphead is also getting something this week.
Cuphead feels like a natural choice because, hey, it's based on a retro animation aesthetic, right? So, hey, an animated series, you know what? That makes sense. But with Hyper Light Drifter, that seems like, well, I won't say it sounds like a bad idea, but considering that is a game that is very, very tight-lipped about its story, no dialogue to speak of, its characters are expressed purely in terms of, like, you know, gestures and, like, their character design, basically. I'm just wondering where that could go as a story.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Rest assured that it isn't going to be like the Castlevania show where everyone's swearing unnecessarily and everyone's like clambering over each other in order to be sassy or to like get a quick, you know, crack wise on one another, which is probably what the reason.
You and I have differing opinions on the Netflix Castlevania show.
Well, that's unless the Hyper Light Drifter animated series is being written by Warren Ellis, I think I have nothing to worry about.
Hyper Light Drifter being written by Joss Whedon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because I wonder, they might take it one of two ways, I guess. One is that they sort of play into the vein of the game and it's just sort of a showcase of beautiful looking art.
Like a Bidey of Brackenwood situation, that sort of thing.
Yeah, sort of just lets the art and the sort of underspoken, is that a word? Anyway, narrative, you know, underspeak for itself. But the other way to go is that they get whoever's written the small snippet of dialogue I heard for Solar Ash to put in to do this. So we'll hear lines
maybe
like,
there's a reason they chose to take it easy in the dialogue. If Solar Ash is anything to go by.
Exactly.
We're being
that's
much too hard
way
on that
too
game.
critical, It's not even, it was like a 30-second teaser where like, they used one trope. They can't write.
The one other thing I played this week, because I was painfully conscious of the fact that I said, you know, I committed that I would have finished it by this week and I hadn't. So I was like, oh, I need something else to talk about because The Last of Us isn't going anywhere. And that was...
Yeah.
I popped up and played the final level of a game I've spoken to you before, but I haven't mentioned on the podcast, called SpaceChem.
Yes, so you've just been holding on to this one for a while and you decided...
Well, I got to the final level and I was like, oh, I need fresh eyes on this. This is taking too much out of me. And then I forgot about it. And I was like, hey, I need something to talk about in the podcast. I'll finish this. And so I did.
So... For people who haven't seen or heard of SpaceChem in any way, I mean, it's like an indie puzzle game, isn't it? Sort of like a top-down, connect the dots kind of thing.
Yes, I suppose you could call it that. It's definitely an indie puzzle game. It's more akin to a programming game. It's like an assembly line.
Mm.
It's made by a developer called Zachtronic Games, and they've made I think it's just one guy.
Sack Barf, apparently.
Yes. He's made a whole bunch of games like this. SpaceChem is the first one. I'm probably going to work my way through the rest whenever I'm in the mood for it. Basically, SpaceChem is... If you've ever played Factorio, this might be familiar to you. It's essentially a assembly line where you're operating a chemical reactor where you're manipulating atoms in order to form molecules. You know, you'll get like... You start with one carbon atom and two hydrogen atoms, and you have to form H2O, water, so you get two hydrogen, one oxygen, and I'll be like, make H2O, and output that on the other side of the screen. It's very akin to programming. It's like a programming game, only it's using a visual interface instead of code.
Sure.
It's considering my day job, it is really just a despondent example of a busman's holiday when you think about it.
So, I mean, I've always had a problem with these sort of factory line games. I guess because the idea of a conveyor belt instinctively stresses me out. It's why I don't play games like Lemmings. It's why I could never get into Mario versus Donkey Kong, which is essentially Lemmings. And it's also why I couldn't get into Factorio. When it comes to SpaceChem, I presume it's more like Factorio in reverse or something, you know, like where instead of building up everything to just continually make more, there is like a sort of objective that you're trying to make for each round.
Yes, you'll be very pleased to hear that unlike Factorio, which is a bit more open, SpaceChem has a solution and you must reach that solution using the resources that are given to you from the beginning. And the puzzles increase in complexity as mechanics are introduced. Like you'll start off, it'll be sort of, all right, you're given two hydrogen atoms and an oxygen atom. And there's a binding site in the center of the screen where you need it passes over that binding site. You need to put in a command that says bind these two molecules, and then you'll have water, and then you'll output it on the other side of the screen and you're good. But later on you'll have things like fusion. You'll have several hydrogen atoms and you'll be expected to output a carbon atom. And you're like, what? I don't have a carbon atom. How do I do that? Well, you got to fuse them all together. Like, because hydrogen, not to alienate people here, has an atomic number of 1, a mass number of 1. But a carbon has one of 8. So you need to fuse it 8 times into a single carbon atom, and then I
love your attempt to not alienate people. Was for anyone who didn't understand the general chemistry you were talking about, was to then speak in like your version of like a children's presenter's voice about what you were talking about.
Mm-hmm. Well, speak about the same complexity but in a gentler tone, and you'll later have things like you have a limited amount of screen real estate. So if your atoms bump into each other, that's a fail. Or if they bump into the edge of the screen, that's a fail. So like space conservation is very big. So you'll have all these atoms flying about the screen, but you'll have a very limited amount of space in which you can put your commands. So like if your track runs over a command that you put in at an earlier point in the track, it'll still repeat that, so you have lots of conflicting things that might bugger up your design. And it gets more complex later on. You're in charge of a single reactor to start with, but eventually you'll have multiple reactors, and you'll have to have them interacting with each other as like the scope broadens and broadens. And there is a story, but it's very nominal. It's a story that's more or less an excuse to hit you with a bunch of puzzles.
Sure. So my presumption for SpaceChem was that it had because you said it had a sort of factory line approach to it, but does that form a timer to the puzzle? Or is it just that when you naturally mess up, you're better off just hitting the reset and starting from scratch?
Much like programming, it has an approach which is, hey, does this break at some point along the line? It'll go through the process until it hits the point where it breaks. At which point it'll go, no, that doesn't work, you'll have to try again. At which point you'll modify it slightly until it's fixed, and then, okay, try that again. That didn't work. Okay, I'll fix that again. How about now? Okay, now it works. Okay, great. And then eventually it has like a leaderboard that calculates how efficient your solution was, which I'm not even going to like try the computer. I know that I have no chance, because I looked very briefly at like some of the pro players for this game, and they're absolute monsters. I was like, no way.
That doesn't surprise me.
The subject matter is quite dry, which I'm sure would put a lot of people off, but the difficulty is like, it's merciless. It's like, here's the mechanics. Here's the rules you need to understand in order to complete the puzzle, and here's a blank screen. Okay, go, work away.
I was kind of getting on board thinking of it like Pipe Mania meets that Element game that you get on phones. I don't know if you've ever played that. It's like the most mindless of fucking experiences.
Doodle God?
No, but it is in the similar vein. Like, it literally is just a screen with like 8 or 10 elements at the start, and you just drag them into each other. And then if you've dragged 2 things that actually work with each other, they'll make a new thing, and then you start just fucking padding out the screen with things that connect to one another. It's like the most mindless and basic of gaming experiences. It can hardly be classified as a game. More like a spreadsheet that's been slowly wheeled out to you. But I like the idea of it when I thought of it like something like Pipe Mania meets that, whatever that's called. I think it's actually called Alchemy, now that I remember.
Oh, how about that?
But your description of it as it's dry and difficult, and it's difficult for you, worst of all, that is absolutely 100% restricted my appeal.
It does a very good job at breaking you in. It introduces each mechanic separately, and it's sort of like, alright, here's an easy version of this mechanic. Now here's a bit harder. Now here it is, an easy version combining it with a mechanic from earlier. Okay, now there's a harder version of both, etc., 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 until you get to the final level, which is just a nightmare, because you need to have you've solved it, you know how to do it, you're getting the elements to the end, but you're not doing it efficiently enough, and it's causing a block up in the pipelines because some things are expecting their elements to come in because they're waiting on other things, but it's not coming fast enough. But other ones have an abundance, so the tubes are getting clogged up, and you're like, ah, and you have to I've had to go back to the drawing board like several times.
So you beat this week then?
I did, yes. I got so frustrated. I was like, I'm so close. It's just not efficient enough. And then I just fell off the bandwagon. And then I jumped back on like yesterday because I was like, well, need to have something to talk about in the podcast. So I did, and now it's good. I might have the next Zachtronic game lined up because they're all different enough. You know, they all have the same principle, which is, you know, using a visual interface to program a solution to an open-ended problem. But they're all sufficiently different. There's several of them now. I own like 6 of them. So it's like I'm set up for like the next 10 years worth of puzzle games. So I'm happy.
Yeah, fuck that. But I'm pleased for you.
Well, how about you? How was your week?
My week, I actually played loads and loads of stuff. Because I'm off the back of having finished quite a number of games. I sort of have a lot of things running concurrently, and they tend not to get finished all at once, but what happened was I had a sort of outpouring of games that I happened to finish at more or less within weeks of each other, or sort of, about like a two week span where I had BioShock Infinite, which we talked about last time, and then I had a couple of other games which I may or may not talk about today. Some of them I will. And then I just do what I always do in this scenario, and I started playing a bunch of other things to replace them with, because I don't know, I'm bad at video games. So I'll briefly walk through a few of the things I touched this week before talking about the thing that I beat that I do want to talk about. First and probably most prominent on the list is that I have started my first and genuine attempt to play Dark Souls this week.
Hey,
yes.
Good on you.
Now, to be fair,
a journey of 1,000 steps.
1,000 fucking backtracks. To be fair, I have played the first few hour or so of Dark Souls before when you were over once, just as a way to pass time. That was many moons ago, and I had more or less forgotten everything except that I knew once I got out of the first area, the asylum or whatever it's called.
Yeah, the Undead Asylum.
Yes, I knew generally what I was looking for in terms of progression from there, which was a sort of rooftop area. And so I was able to trial and error my way through some shit areas that I shouldn't have been in to figure out how to get there.
Tried to get into the catacombs, did you?
Yeah, well, didn't try. I successfully got there and got pounded to death. And I tried to remember how we had set up the character the first time we played. And I couldn't remember anything except that it was probably smart to get the master key. I think that was a tip you'd given me. I can't remember, but that's what I went for this time.
So basically, the master key allows you to get access to areas of the game earlier than you would have been able to get to otherwise.
Oh, yeah. Which I have managed to do. A couple of gates and stuff I've opened, but each time I step into them, I get fucking crushed.
Oh, did you encounter Havel the Rock?
You got, I don't fucking know. Let me Google it. Let me see.
There's a man in a tower with armor made entirely from solid stone who wields a massive fucking club who you can only access by using the master key to get in, earlier on anyway. And he will stomp you the first time you meet him.
Yes, looking at him, and yes indeed, it was exactly Havel the Rock who kicked my ass the last time I used the master key. And in exactly the way I'm sure many people remember it, in that, ooh, there's just a dude with some armor, maybe I can take a whack out of him.
And then he reduces you to a red smear on the floor.
Yeah, I barely got within batting range of him before he cleaned me out of the fucking room. I think I'm slightly further on than we had played. Like, I don't remember the names of these places, but I got to Monster on Bridge. He's like an ogre-y looking dude.
Oh, the tourist demon.
Yes, that sounds familiar. And I accidentally glitched him to death. I managed to somehow convince him to jump off the bridge, which I'm sure is like a pro fucking speedrunning move or something that they know how to do, but it was just a sheer fucking accident for me.
You didn't win. He lost.
Yeah, that's true. So then I met the meme, the Sun Lord dude.
The man, the legend, the myth.
Yeah. Again, I'm really fucking terrible with names, so I don't.
Solaire of Astora.
That's the dude. What a jolly dude.
The reason why everyone likes him is because him and I think maybe one other character in this game are a ray of sunshine in a bleak, miserable world.
That would make sense. And to be fair, it was much appreciated, but at the time, I was thinking, I need to get to a fucking checkpoint.
Yeah.
And I'm here at this area that's kind of between worlds, and I see this bridge ahead, and I think to myself, I know this bridge from somewhere. I've seen it somewhere. I know there's something up with it, and I think it's a fucking dragon.
A version of this bridge exists in, I feel like, every mainline Souls game.
Okay.
It's in Demon Souls, which might be where you remember from.
Oh, you know what? Then it might be from Demon Souls, because I had played a good bit of that. But I knew what to do for the dragon. And when I say I knew what to do, I knew what to do, but I didn't know how to trigger it to work, and it was actually really frustrating. Two things happened. One was that I took a side road and found my bonfire that I was excited to get to, and that bonfire turned out to be the one I'd already been to, and I jumped down in such a way that I had not triggered a ladder to get back up.
Oh dear.
So I fucking ended up having to do the whole walk again.
So there's like a concept that I've heard discussed with Souls games in particular, and it's been popularized as because of Souls games, and it's the concept of shortcut porn. So because of the level design of Dark Souls, and Dark Souls 3 as well, a lesser extent with Dark Souls 2, but with Dark Souls 1, it has a real nice feeling of you can look up or look down or look in a distance and you can go, yeah, okay, I meant to go that way. And you go that way, and you fight through the level, and you get there, and you look back, and you can see where you were, and you go, man, that's really cool. But if you're going through, like, up or down, or through, like, catacombs, or through caves, and you kick a ladder, or if you take an elevator, and it goes back to the bonfire from the very first beginning, and you go, oh, so that leads to this, and that leads to that, and that leads to that, and like the geography of the level design just clicks in your head, and you go, oh, that's really cool.
Mm-hmm. There's something in there in terms of other things too, like putting, figuring out where like 3 pieces of a jigsaw puzzle go, for example. It's got that same
it
sensation.
All just clicks.
Like, things are starting to fit. So anyway, I got this fucking. I did my backtrack. I got to this dragon bridge again, and then I'm looking at this dragon across the bridge who didn't kill me before. He kills me this time. I come back. I do the whole thing again because I walk towards him. He sets me up, but I do the whole walk again, and I get to the part where I'm now looking at him going like, I know I have to trigger this guy to come at me, but I spend quite a while standing around and edging forward and backwards towards him to try and get him to leap, and he doesn't do it.
So, if you haven't already got past that bit, I can tell you, and I think I'm saving you a lot of trouble, and I don't think it's a spoiler for me to say so I can tell you if you like.
I have gotten past that part, so you can go ahead. Tell me what you mean anyway.
In Demon Souls, there's a big bridge that you need to run across whilst avoiding Dragonfire in order to progress.
Sure.
In the bridge in Dark Souls, you do not need to cross the bridge. In fact, you need to go under the bridge for a separate route.
I also did go underneath the bridge, and I sort of went through that, and it seemed to be going to an area that was in the right direction, but it was kind of winding on its own thing. So I assumed I was doing something wrong, or I was sort of skipping a section. Well, like, that dragon's going to be there if I have to come back here, so, I might as well figure it out now. I stuck with the bridge. I ended up looking up a video to see what the fuck I was doing wrong, and it was something that I was doing wrong, I guess. It wasn't... The problem wasn't that I wasn't waiting in the right spot. The problem was, because I tried to do this 2 ways after finding out, and it still didn't work. And what happened was, it didn't trigger because I was supposed to walk into an area, then walk back out, and then walk towards them, then walk back, then hide for a bit. And what I did was essentially walk to the area, then hide for a bit, and it didn't work. Like I had like a part of the chain of command actions was to walk into the hideout and then back out into the open. Otherwise, it didn't trigger this dragon for some reason, even though like that doesn't make any sense really. Like the dragon can see you the whole time and he's grunting, he's getting pissed off at you. And that's what I've been enjoying so far. I feel like I've enjoyed it more as a social game. I liked it more when you were around. Put it that way.
Yeah, Dark Souls is a real water cooler game.
Yeah. So I feel I have this compulsion that says to me, keep playing. But if I get frustrated at any point to such a degree that I feel like stopping, I should instead just hold off and make it a more social experience with people who'd be willing to sit through it like you might be willing to sit through it with me. And sort of, not so much rally me, but at least we could laugh at the failures. Because failing alone for personal gain, it doesn't really do much for me. But then again, I haven't gotten to such a point where I've actually been frustrated by any of the bosses yet. So I gotta see how that pans out. I 100% I know it will happen. It just hasn't happened yet. And to be fair, I'll give it this. I already like it a little more than Bloodburn. I like it a little.
That's that place down the road, isn't it? Bloodburn.
Yeah. I like it a little more than Bloodborne because it does a thing that I didn't like specifically about Bloodborne, which was it refills the fucking flasks when you die. It really bugs me in Bloodborne that you have to fucking grind for health.
Yeah, I feel like that's I prefer Bloodborne on the whole, but that is one aspect of it. I was like, definitely a step backwards. Like the Estus flask, you can recharge it at bonfires, it's perfect.
Yeah, I'm definitely getting less frustrated by Dark Souls on the whole, because when I die, I don't feel like I have to fucking backtrack for no fucking reason, put it that way.
It is a game that has like a bit of an early investment of time and patience, but it really pays off once you've got over the initial difficulty barrier. Once you know what you're doing, it's very rewarding.
Cool. Well, I feel we'll check back in now and then on Dark Souls.
Unlike The Last of Us, where it's like, shut up until you're done. Dark Souls is very, hey, I went down through like a dungeon and I saw some pretty fucked up shit. What was that about? I know, right?
Exactly. And I mean, it might not always make interesting enough conversation to make the podcast, but at least it'll be something worth looking out for in the future. It will definitely come up again.
All right.
In terms of other stuff I played, I've got two quick entries. One is RAD by Double Fine. Yeah, so this is something I got in a humble bundle, and I had actually seen it revealed at the E3 whenever it was revealed, maybe a year or two ago. And it looked cool to me at the time, but I didn't hear a single fucking thing about it after that point. And then I picked up this humble bundle a couple of months ago, and it was just in there, and I was like, "What the fuck?" It was published by Bandai Namco, and it was a part of a Namco bundle. And I was like, "Is this the same fucking thing? I thought we were still waiting on this. It's like a roguelike."
I've never seen this before.
Really? But that's what I mean. Like it flew so fucking under the radar. And it's really fucking bizarre to me that it did, because it's really quite good. It's got that Binding of Isaac energy. And that's a game that I sunk more time than I've cared to think about into. It's one of those roguelikes that actually clicked for me and not just frustrated me by going a little easy on design. And to be fair, Rad's a game that when my brother and I dabbled with like scribbling down game ideas, this kind of concept of like taking on aspects of your enemies that we've seen in, I think,
Mega Man, Kirby.
Yeah, and then some old Sega games and stuff. It's always been an idea that I've always liked in video games, is just having different powers, that arcadey style of picking up powers as you play, but also getting that influenced by the enemies around you. Rad does one slightly better. You not only do that while you're in combat, but you also pick up whole traits from sort of certain spots on the map as you play, in a very Binding of Isaac way, where you go into a certain room and sometimes it'll have something you can pick up and it becomes a part of you. That same vibe. I fucking love that kind of design. I don't think I'd care to play a lot of games like that, but I really liked it with Binding of Isaac, and this is more of like the melee version. So far, I've only played maybe 2 or 3 hours of it, but so far I'm really liking it. It's got a little bit of the quirk about Double Fine that I like. in that the characters, they're all just a tad quirky, but not too quirky.
Not insufferably so.
No, not at all.
They're not open speech marks, quirky closed speech marks.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, so far, I'm not even sure what progress looks like in it. I did beat one full map run and then died on the second map run. But I mean, I'm happy to keep playing at it. I've unlocked a couple of characters who like change the way it works in a sort of downwell kind of way. I guess in the Binding of Isaac way as well, where you pick a different character and you get a couple of different automatic traits. But so far, it looks good, and would recommend if people are into that kind of thing. I'm playing it on PC, but I think it's perfect for the Switch. So if people have a fucking Switch, get it for Switch. The other game I picked up recently and have started was King of Fighters XIII.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Right, let me double check. Which one is that?
It's the really pretty one. The not most recent one.
The last one they did that was sprite related. 15, did you say?
13. Yeah, because they have a 14 out, and it's also on sale right now at time of recording. But it's 3D, man. Like,
I know. Listen, Lee, that was like... It was a controversy at the time, but everyone's just had to move on, and let's not open
I
old
get
ones.
it.
That's
No.
all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, no, to be fair, I get it. And I would rather have 3D King of Fighters than no King of Fighters at all. And to be fair, I'm still very new to this franchise. I played the tutorial, I played one run of the arcade mode, getting the grips with basically how it works. So far, fine. I'm not going to be able to pull off all the fucking move cancel shit. I barely got past that stuff in the tutorial, so it's never going to flow smoothly.
King of Fighters has like short hops and medium hops and high hops.
That stuff I can get my head around, but it's the fucking, like, interrupt one's power move with another power move while holding down two buttons and flipping backwards, and you've got yourself a chained action that never ends. And I've never been able to pull any of that shit off in fighting games, and it's never going to happen now. But man, does it look pretty when it happens against me.
Yeah, I'm rewatching some Evo footage of King of Fighters 13, and man, this game is so gorgeous. It's so pretty.
This is one that I knew it came out on the PS3, and I remember at the time it was the first time I'd really ever seen King of Fighters, and the reviews were kind of middling, but I was looking at it and I was fucking spellbound by it. I was like, how could it be middling? It's so pretty. And by middling, I mean like 70s and 80s. You know, the flawed version, the gaming scale.
The games journalist's idea of mediocre.
Exactly. I'll say one thing I really like about it, which has nothing to do with the combat or anything, and nothing to do with its gorgeous, gorgeous visuals, which I must assure you, and anyone who hasn't seen it, is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, for those of you wondering, it's sprite-based, but the sprites are so highly detailed and have so many frames in their animation that you wouldn't even know looking at it right away.
It's just obvious enough to be spectacular. Like, and in the purest sense of spectacular, as in it's like a spectacle.
It's obvious
to see.
enough for you to appreciate the artistry that must have went into them.
Yeah, exactly. No, but my favorite thing so far is that in the arcade mode, and I'm not sure how much of this follows through for the rest of the game or whatever, but anytime one of your fighters bumps into another fighter, there will be a small, like, 2 or 3 windows of dialogue exchange. And it has been varied each time it's happened, and each time your person gets swapped out for one of the 3 in your team, they'll have their own dialogue for this person, you know, like, and it's mid-fight. It's a really fucking good system, but I love being able to sort of drink in the characters and their little interactions. That kind of small touch, it's not invasive, and I think that it adds a lot of character to this, where I feel like games like Tekken, which I'm a big fan of, has always failed to convince me of its characters. And it's mostly because it doesn't have anything like this, which is so non-invasive to me that it feels like it should be the easiest of necessities for all fighting games. Maybe something you could turn off in the options.
I remember Yahtzee during his Let's Play series. He was talking with his friend Gabe, who is a fighting games guy, whilst Yahtzee generally isn't. And he was saying that one thing he did always admire about the genre is that it's basically a pure exercise in character design.
Sure.
Because all you've got going for you is the coming back to that word, the tightness, the way it feels.
Of course.
You've got the tightness and you've got the characters. Those are the only two things that fighting games really have, like, going for them. The two main elements of, like, a fighting game.
Yeah.
So you better make sure that those two things are spot on.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like for the longest time, that's already a given. You know, like, there are so many options out there, why fucking bother? And especially the sort of the mainstays. I mean, they're almost a given they're going to be good. But I mean, like, the combat is a given it's going to be good. So I think, like, the little things on top of that add a little character. I mean, at least Mortal Kombat has this fluid, fascinatingly camp story about it, you know. So it's kind of got its bases covered in this regard. But I think if you had to do the most minimum of touches, King of Fighters XIII approach of little dialogue exchanges that precede your fight is the perfect way for me.
It gives you just enough snippets for you to work with to set the imagination alight.
Yeah, exactly. Alright, the big game that I played this week and finished.
Oh.
Devil May Cry 5.
Oh, shit.
That's right. Which I'm not going to spoil because, A, you haven't played it.
I was about to say, you need to shut up right the fuck now, or else I'm not going to listen.
I'm going to do the same thing I did with my Bioshock Infinite conversation, is that I'm going to talk around the real game itself.
Uh-huh.
But, to preface this has been like a year-long thing I've been doing. Was to play back to front the Devil May Cry series. And I don't know why I decided to do this. I think it was because
I gushed a lot at you earlier on about it.
Yeah,
which might have been
that was
factor.
definitely a factor. I think the other thing was the announcement of Devil May Cry 5 was a big factor.
That probably would have catalyzed it, yeah.
Yeah, because looking at Devil May Cry 5 and seeing that this series was legitimized enough to keep going into this newest of generations, I felt, fuck yeah, alright, maybe now's the time. So I spent much of the last year or so playing through the series, and I can say off the bat that I think Devil May Cry 5 is the best of them. And
that's fine.
Maybe that's that they've been able to refine the design over time. Man, that rhymed.
Yeah, I've heard it described as basically a denouement and a love letter to the franchise as a whole.
Yeah. But to be fair, you could never take that for granted because, I mean, 4 was all over the fucking place. 2 was all over it's basically not a Devil May Cry game.
Those were early days. They were still finding.
But
they knew what was what.
They also rebooted after 4. So, like, I think it's fair to say to people that they don't know what to expect from the series because it feels like it shifts gears pretty often and kind of goes in a sort of reverse Star Trek numbering system where it's actually the odd numbers that are always good.
Well, 4 was alright. I thought the 4 was quite good. I don't think it's fair to lump 4 in with 2. I feel like I would have... I agreed with that when I had started playing Devil May Cry 4, and I agreed with it when I got up to level 17 in the game, where I had been through what I assumed was the worst of it. We were now just blitzing our way backwards through the game as Donté instead of Nero, and I was still having a great time because he's never played better at that point. And then the next 3 stages undid everything that I was holding on to because it was Dante's worst boss fight ever in the stupid giant statue. Then it's... fighting the Pope. Beating up the Pope.
Pope statue. The Pope fight itself is fine. The Pope statue... The whatever you call him, it's the savior.
Yeah.
Fuck that guy. That boss is the most tedious fucking bullshit. That boss fight I can officially roll out as maybe the worst fight in the entire series in my head. It's up there with the helicopter in Devil May Cry 2. That's how bad I feel about it.
That was not my experience at all. The helicopter from 2 is just... It's the worst because you fight it, and then you beat it, and then you continue on, and then it comes back and you realize that you probably weren't supposed to fight it in the first place. You were meant to run from the get-go, but the game never told you that. No.
Yeah, but here's the thing, right? That was about 3 stages into a game that was already terrible. It didn't ruin Devil May Cry 2. Devil May Cry 2 had nothing to be ruined because it was already terrible. This fight actively ruined Devil May Cry 4. The damage done by this fight was far greater than the helicopter, because I could write the helicopter off and say, well, it's just part of this shit game. I'm never going to think about it again other than a low light and an already low experience. But this fucking savior...
that got you.
Yeah, it's the context. But this fucking savior fight, I swear to God, is the most frustrating thing. And then it's followed up with what has to be the worst of boss rushes I've ever played in any game. It's like dice and then just every boss in the game that you've now played twice already and now have to play for a third time.
Oh, yes, the dice. I think I had an easier time with that than most because I figured out the trick for it fairly early on.
Oh, you know, that's the whole thing. I never had a problem with the dice. Like, the dice is gameable, and I immediately figured it out. And so every time it came up, I was like, but this isn't gameplay. I'm being rewarded for already knowing how to do this. But it's the boss fights that are worse, because it's just a long stretch of fights that you haven't done just twice. You've done them twice. This is the third time you're fighting these people.
Yeah, I know.
And you've already fought them once as Nero.
I'm just happy to have the opportunity to fight Credo a second time, because the one thing about that game that I found frustrating was that you have to fight every boss twice, except for the best boss in the game, which is Credo, which is right in the middle.
See, that's part of the problem as well for me, is because I thought the game knew how good that fight was, that they should leave it out. You know? Savor the fucking moment. You know, you go through Donté and he doesn't fight the fucking Credo equivalent, so you're starting to think, oh, it's safe. That they wanted that to be impactful, to be different.
Well, I mean, impactful. You fight it because he's cool and it's a cool fight. That's what I
mean. It's the most impactful because it's the best one. You know, that's why it's like it feels better than the rest by a country mile. And you start to think, well, even the developers know it. They're not even bringing it up. You know, we're going for everybody but this, and then you still have to do it again, and you're like, oh, for fuck's sake. There's nothing about the design that's so good it can't be enjoyed one time and then let it stay with you. It has to be reiterated in a far less impactful scenario, you know, like watered down.
I think it's just like, did you like the boss rush from 3?
Yes, to an extent, with the fucking upside down Etcher stairs thing. That wasn't too bad because you could kind of pick and choose a little bit.
Yeah, you could game it a wee bit. You could only do like 3 at minimum, or 4.
Yeah, exactly. You could figure out the system, and you didn't have to fight everybody. So you kind of worked out which ones you were happiest to fight, and then ran with that number. So I didn't feel as hard done by that. And there's a little bit of a boss fight or a boss rush in Devil May Cry 5. And they've done it so much better, where it doesn't affect you at all because you're doing it under such a different context. And some of them you haven't fought with this character at all, that you're like, okay, well then it's a totally different experience. It's just totally different. But 4 was egregious. The word egregious is never meant so fucking much. And then just the final, it ends on such a fucking damp fart. It's such a fucking... The story that you start to care about, to some extent, I guess, kind of peters out after such a frustrating experience over these last 3 missions, that by the end of it, that it turns out to be just a repeat of the lamest fight. You're like, okay. Are we done? Devil May Cry 4, are we done?
One thing I appreciated about 4 was that since the player perspective is initially Nero, and is a Nero for most of the game, it really gives you a good feel for, like, if you're not Donté and you're someone else looking at Donté, man, Donté is such a dickhead.
Yeah, absolutely.
What a prat. Like, people are dying here, dude. Take this seriously. Jesus Christ. Because he did seem like a bit of a psycho in 3 when, like, Lady's trying to have, like, a very serious, like, character arc, and he's just, like, going, yeah, wow,
yeah,
and all that shit. But with Nero, because Nero is, like, mostly human, like, Donté is like Dr. Manhattan. Like, he's so far above everybody else that it's impossible for him to, like, relate to anybody.
Well, exactly, and they do a similar kind of thing in 5, because now you've got 2 other characters to play as. Now it's like a whole series of player characters are reliant on this dude bringing his fucking A game. And so you, as you would be in that scenario, are understandably panicked about the whole experience. So Devil May Cry 5 is the best game.
That's the SSS rank. That's the smoking sick style.
Exactly. It's even gone so far. It's now smoking sexy style, as we all knew it should have been. I think it doesn't spoil anything to say that this refines the series in a way that I've always wanted it to be. It took out a couple of the things that annoyed me the most about Devil May Cry, because I felt like they were holding on to a style of game that it came from its Resident Evil origins that they had yet to shed. So they've finally gotten rid of Resi-era backtracking.
That's very good. I'm very happy to see that.
It was something I always just thought, there's got to be a more direct way of playing this game. And they've finally done it. And it's just to make a fucking linear game, because it's an action game that doesn't have to... There are branches, you can adventure and stuff. You can explore a little bit, but at the end of the day, you'll know the path you're on. That's more conducive to what Devil May Cry is, I think, in its essence. It also gets rid of janky platforming. There's very little of it in Devil May Cry 5. There was still holding on to little bits of stupid platforming in Devil May Cry 4, like Nero's little grappling hook thing.
Like the Devil Bringer used as like a platforming tool. I know what you mean.
Yeah, so they have that, but they use it exclusively for exploration now. It's not... You're literally looking around to see if you can find these little pegs with Nero to find cool shit. You're no longer reliant on these things to get through a stage. That, I think, is the best way to handle them, because it's not a bad idea inherently. It's just bad that it has nothing to do with how you play the game.
Yeah, it's just clumsy.
Yeah, exactly. It just feels a little out of step. And another thing they've gotten rid of, which frustrated me only because their inclusion suggested that I should use them to some extent, were Devil Stars, which are your mid-fight health packs that you could use at any time to fucking brute force your way through a battle.
Well, yeah, you shouldn't be using those anyway. What are you, some kind of casual?
Yeah, I mean, I was more annoyed by the Devil Stars inclusion because it suggested that maybe at some point you could use them.
Well, it's just there for people who, don't really know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And for who need that extra
but
bit
I
of help.
think
people not like you and I who are concerned with your end of episode ranking or whatever.
Sure. So what they've done now is the yellow orbs, not only do they throw them at you, but they essentially, when you get beat in the fight, you can cash one in to continue from where you were in the fight. But, you take a significant blow to everything you were trying to work for. And they are very, very easily ignored. It gives you a little option when you die. It's like, you want to fucking yellow orb this?
No!
And you go, no. It's like, alright, you die.
Fine.
So, I mean, it's all those little refinements that make it extra good. But on top of that, it's just got the best of everything else. Anyway, this is all way off where I wanted to go with this. And actually, now that I think about it, what I wanted to talk about was tightness.
Oh, how about that? I picked up from the very beginning. It was foreshadowing.
Oh my god, yeah, I didn't. It just only dawned on me now, because I wanted to talk about how fucking Devil May Cry 5 is so fucking tight.
Oh, Donté, you're so tight.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about another reason why I loved Devil May Cry 5 happens to be very topical at the minute, because I loved how fucking condensed it was. I loved that it was like a 10, 11 hour game. And it's back-to-back fucking memorable. Like, every level of it is super, super memorable.
That is topical, this week in particular, on account of the whole Last of Us debacle.
Yeah, between The Last of Us and PlayStation's previous president, Sean Blank. Layden, yeah, that's him. Well done. Good job. You've got the insider knowledge required to keep this podcast afloat.
Yeah, don't worry. I'm bringing the expertise. I watched a Jim Sterling video about it earlier this morning, so I'm wired in.
Yep, and I've got that linked for our audience because it's also good. I actually wrote like a sort of guide of what I wanted to talk about today before I seen either the comment on Twitter from Sean or Jim's video, so I feel like it's been kind of swept from me a little bit in terms of what I wanted to talk about in that game. Condensed game design is a good thing. And now I can just refer people to the Jim video where he says about the importance of editing, which is great.
Yeah, it's witchcraft. It's magic.
So I get to walk away from that conversation and then instead pivot to a far trashier conversation, which is
enticing.
What the fuck is Ghost of Tsushima doing as a fucking open world game?
What do you mean, Lee?
So, have you seen any of the gameplay trailers or footage of Ghost of Tsushima, the upcoming PS4 exclusive?
I watched the 10-minute gameplay trailer that was released about a month ago.
Yes, that's right. It was maybe a couple of weeks ago. What's your thoughts? What you feeling? Looks cool, right?
It does look very cool. I do like the open world because they've taken a very, open approach to it, where it's like, hey, what does a samurai do in, like, an episode of Kung Fu or Samurai Jack? What does he do? Well, I don't know, he picks up some flowers and lets the winds blow them away, and then he follows the wind. He goes wherever the wind takes him. And I thought that that's a really cool way of getting from A to B.
Yes, and I can agree with that. And I can agree that there is a certain charm to being let out off the rein as a samurai and sort of
being a
hitting
Ronin,
the road,
just wandering
you know,
around.
like very seven samurai style at the start of that film. Kind of just, it's all about walking up the trail.
It's funny you should say Seven Samurai because they've dropped Kurosawa's name a few times, and his influence is pretty obvious.
Yeah.
You and I used to be amateur film critics before we got this current gig,
That's
so
right.
we're well aware of all that. But one thing I did notice is like they tried to do like a black and white filter.
That's right. Yep.
And I remember looking at that and going, guys, I really appreciate the thought, but that doesn't look remotely right. You've just put like black and white filter in it, and that doesn't capture the sort of the grainy interplay of like it doesn't have the same chiaroscuro that you're really looking for.
That's a mighty fancy word. Or term.
You got to get some of that tenebrinism. But yeah, if you look directly at the black and white filter that they put over Ghost of Tsushima, which is it's a nice thought. I like the idea. They're clearly like big fans.
Yeah.
And they're trying to recreate it. But if you contrast it with like actual footage of a Kurosawa film, or any kind of black and white film for that matter, like there's a very clear distinction. But you know what? They seem dedicated enough where like if somebody were to point it out to them, they probably might be willing to put in the extra bit of oomph to really
I'm not sure,
sell it.
because the whole thing with filming in black and white is that people or the filmmakers would use shadows to such an extent that they were putting physical effects on lighting to make that just pop out.
For on a shot by shot basis.
That would be a significant amount of work. Like they would have to basically recomposite the entire story that they're trying to tell.
They would have to make it like cell shaded or something like that.
Yeah, it would have to be very dramatic.
That'd be like Mad World. Hey, do you remember Mad World?
Of course I remember
on the
Mad
Wii?
World. Never played it though.
No, neither did I. But I know what it looks like though, and it seems more in line with what you're discussing.
That's exactly more in line with what I'm talking about. It was designed from the ground up to make the best of the two tones. Anyway, what I like about Ghost of Tsushima is that it's a game style that I've never been particularly good at, but I've always enjoyed. It reminds me a little of the Thief-ish sprawl 'em up. It's actually become more popular over time that you're just given an open area and a million and one ways to assault it. And I guess that's because the prevalency of open world games has risen to such an extent that this is about the only way to squeeze any challenge out of any of these, to sort of build in game design in a technically designless medium as open world games.
Unscripted.
But Ghost of Tsushima is a game that I feel, now again, this is me very preemptively calling it out when I have not played it. And I could be entirely wrong about this, but this looks like it's taken the wrong approach. It's following a trend that I don't think it needs.
How so?
I think that all this means is that I'm going to have to fucking horse track my way to mission markers like every other fucking game. I'm fucking sick of that shit.
The impression I got was that with the wind blowing the flowers indicating where you should go.
Yeah.
And the way they seem to emphasize you should, if you're running around in the overworld and you see smoke off in the distance, that's where you should go because that's where the action is.
Sure.
That they seem to be de-emphasizing the sort of,
the clutter.
Skyrim, oh, 1 minute, let me fast track over to this part of the map and take care of this busy work. Rinse, repeat 50 times over. Although, of course, I do concede that it is a bit early for me to be, saying things like that. It could be the same as every other open world game, but they seem to be...
I feel like that's...
emphasizing in part in the demo, the bits that seem to encourage a more organic approach to seeking out content.
Content.
It always comes back to that word.
Of course. I mean, but the only reason we started the podcast was in our endless pursuit for content.
Dread it, run from it. It all comes back to content.
Yeah, well, I mean, I agree. They've done seemingly a good job of de-emphasizing modern trends of the overcluttered HUD, but in no way that I didn't see already done in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, a game that I fucking loathe. Which did a good job of giving you the option to turn off everything and just anytime you got stuck or generally lost, use your big fucking hawk to point you in the right direction. I feel like these kind of semi-hot fixes to open world design do nothing that can't be improved significantly by just having a stage start after the previous stage. I understand that there's something enjoyable about open world games, but I think it's mostly in the terms that an open world game that is designed from the ground up to emphasize exploration or emphasize like motion through the world. I mean, it's why I like Breath of the Wild, which actually has the reverse problem of anytime it grounds you into a traditional Zelda dungeon, that's when it feels like it's at its least fluid and enjoyable, because it's kind of fitting into a thing that the game is no longer emphasizing, which is puzzle solving isn't really the main gameplay mechanic, the main core loop of Breath of the Wild. It's exploration and traversal. My real thing with the horse world transversal thing for Ghost of Tsushima is it doesn't look like it's set up to take advantage of momentum and traversal in the world. It just looks like another Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Red Dead Redemption 2, which is, you're in this big world and my is it pretty, and you might just even get lost and sidetracked along the way, but fuck me, you're also going to spend, no matter what you do, you're going to spend 15 minutes tracking from A to B, and maybe there's more of a figure it out element here where you like see the smoke and you do have to work your way there. But I think what we've seen so far, we haven't seen a lot of like cool Breath of the Wild sort of steps. Like you don't have a glider or a grappling hook or anything to help you traverse cool obstacles. You just walk. You might climb a little.
You have animal friends that tell you things.
Yeah. See, that's not what I mean. That's not gameplay.
Well, I mean, they might help guide you towards interesting things.
Those are fucking signs, That's not actual gameplay. And I mean, if the game...
Oh, sorry, I've been misunderstanding you. I thought, like, your complaint was the sort of, what's the point of having this big open world if, like, they're just going to expect you to just go from A to B and, like, there's very little, like, depth to it?
No,
Plus
I do think there is something of an experience in figuring out where the fuck you're going in a world, but I also don't feel like that's all that fucking interesting for the mechanics we've seen so far for Ghost of Tsushima. I feel like the emphasis on the game is in its combat, in its cool setting, in its stealth mechanics. I don't see how horseback riding from A to B, even if you're working out which way to go, fulfills the needs of the narrative while also keeping the succinct enjoyability of the game as high as possible. I feel like that's a distracting factor, almost a cop to the modern trends of the day, or maybe in just Sucker Punch's like own history, a cop off to that. They've done sort of more sprawly levels with the Sly games. I mean, to be fair, they were still linear when they needed to be. They just had open hubs, which was great. And then they had Infamous, which, to be fair, in its open worldness, very condensed worlds, all three games.
Yeah, I appreciated that about Infamous.
Yeah, but also, so much of the powers in that game are about zipping from A to B as cool and as interesting as possible. So it does tick the Breath of the Wild box for me. Because, like, as you start to play the game, ended up picking up the I rocket off the building power and I speed up on rails power. I no longer walk across them. That shit's exciting and aids the game.
when he was talking about Infamous and Prototype, he said, a sandbox is only as good as the means by which you get around it.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, the other side of the argument, I played Shadow of War, the second Mordor game. Mm-hmm. And, it's got the opposite problem. Well, it's got the same problem, but in the opposite direction, where it gives you everything to traverse the map in an instant.
Mm-hmm. Which defeats the purpose, yeah.
Well, exactly. You start off with a triple backflip jump that basically crosses the map in an instant, and then you land and you get a speed boost, so you can cross it in a couple of seconds. Then why have it there, you know?
Yeah.
But this looks a bit closer to the Red Dead Redemption sort of approach, which I put up with in the first Red Dead Redemption, probably for the same reasons I'll put up with it with Ghost of Tsushima, because the world was unique, and I hadn't been in a cowboy game before, and I have not been in an open world samurai game before, so I will probably like to sprawl around a little bit, but I don't see, especially with Sucker Punch having a history of doing cool hubs, but, linear missions, why we couldn't have had a more condensed hub. Like, they emphasize how big the map is in Ghost of Tsushima in that video that I'll have linked for everybody.
Yeah, that's always an amber light for me, to be honest.
And it's just it couldn't have been the last thing I wanted to hear in the fucking world off the back of Assassin's Creed fucking Odyssey.
Yes, but what's in it, though? What's in the world?
Exactly. Fuck all. You spend up to half an hour doing fuck all to get to A to B, whereas, Breath of the Wild every 5, even Skyrim and definitely The Witcher, you can go 5 minutes any direction and you're there at something, I
remember an old web comic called Living in Oblivion. It might have been a blog, actually, where somebody, on a lark, decided what they would do was they created a really plain-looking character in the Elder Scrolls Oblivion.
Okay.
And just picked a village and just decided how long they could go as just living, role-playing as a boring NPC villager who's just trying to get by on, trading and hunting or whatever, before some stupid call of adventure basically thrust him into a life of excitement.
That sounds great.
It goes I heard there's some bandits operating on the side of town. Ooh, well, that sounds dangerous. Might want to stay away from that. It was by the same guy that made Concerned, if you'll remember, the Half-Life 2 webcomic.
I've never heard of it.
Oh, that's a blast from the past. I'm not surprised you don't remember it.
This is the exciting element for this show, is that you're connected to the internet,
I'm wired in.
Yeah, to the dark web, or just the grey web, maybe.
I can get you into contact with Anonymous. I know a couple of guys. Just ask me after the podcast. It's fine.
It's fine. It's fine.
Hey, do you want to buy some drugs? Get on the Silk Road. Oh wait, that got taken down, didn't it? Never mind. Forget that.
What?
Oh, the Silk Road? That got taken down, didn't it?
The game Silk Road?
No, the web service on the dark web where you could buy things on a black market. I can already tell that I thought that you had the base knowledge required for me to talk about this, but I can see. Never mind.
See, this is exactly.
I'm
what
demonstrating your point a bit too well.
Exactly.
Here, I
think. Great. Yeah, no, none of that's getting taken out. Anyway, Ghost of Tsushima. Fucking goddamn you.
Fingers crossed, don't fuck it up.
Too late. News. Do you want to do news?
Yeah. You know what? Nah, let's not do news. End the podcast here. Yeah, of course we're going to do news.
Okay. When someday you're gonna say that legitimately. You'll come begging to me to not do news. You'll be like, Lee, it's been 3 hours.
That'll be like the week I got MeToo'd. I was like, let's not do this. Let's not do this weekly.
Well, how did you know the first news story would be a brief allusion to Me Too?
Uh-huh.
I feel like it just needs some form, like a check mark here, because obviously we have no sway. We are not actually in the video game industry.
Allegedly. Lots of allegations for this news.
It's been an exciting week for anyone who's nosy. and then wants to see also. All right, let me rephrase that. That could be taken both ways.
That's staying in.
Yeah. All right. It's been a good week for those who like to see some form of comeuppance.
Yeah,
that sounds a little less
Twitchers
ambiguous. Yeah, Twitch is getting blacklisted for a week. That's pretty good off the basis of some of the nightmarish monsters on there.
Mm-hmm. I don't know about most streamers until, you know what? I'm pretty sure I've learned of the names of most streamers through them accidentally having a heated gamer moment or them being MeToo'd or something like that than I ever would have learned of otherwise.
Yeah, that's pretty... I mean, to be fair, I follow the Overwatch gaming community, which we've not breached and probably won't for a while. But from Overwatch League, I follow quite a number of streamers and have gotten to contact with... have gotten into following.
You've been networking.
Yeah, that's it. Big networking on Twitch. It's only a matter of time before they me too. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I would know some Twitch people. Plus, we did have a semi-monthly ritual of going onto Twitch and playing Jackbox games with absolute strangers, and hopefully none of them get me too'd. Or, I mean, unless they deserve it. God, I gotta be less ambiguous with...
Open foot, insert mouth.
Yeah,
no,
exactly. Wait. Man, it's a strong game for episode titles this week.
Mm-hmm. So much competition. There's gonna be weeks we're gonna be starved for them, and we're gonna be, cursing ourselves for having overindulged in weeks prior.
Oh,
it's like,
God.
Man, we could really use some of that magic right now.
I think it has to be open foot insert mouth. That should have just been the name of the show, to be fair.
Yeah, what? That's a strong title. That's a contender. I suppose as far as the recent rash of Me Too's is concerned, the one that stung the most for me was Chris Avallone. You ever heard of Chris Avallone?
Yes, the writer of Dying Light and other things more popular than Dying Light.
Yeah, a whole
Fallout
bunch of
New
things.
Vegas.
Planescape Torment, Icewind Dale, Baldur's Gate, Star Wars: The Old Republic.
Oh man.
Yeah, KOTOR 2, Neverwinter Nights, Fallout New Vegas, FTL, Wasteland 2, Pillars of Eternity, Tyranny, Prey, Divinity
Pillars
Original
of Eternity
Sin 2,
God damn.
Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and I thought that he worked on Mass Effect, but it doesn't seem to be here, so I guess not. Anyway, I was thinking to myself, well, shit, there goes one of like the 10 good video game writers.
I did see a hot tweet that said there goes the only good video game writer. Maybe not so far. Maybe in his genre.
He
does have a nice little RPG niche for himself.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the genre that probably gives opportunity for, screenwriting or game writing, however you want to call it.
That's probably the biggest profile as well. I mean, it's not like a fucking Twitch streamer with his audience of children. Chris Avallone's an actual long-term professional, quite well respected and liked by journalists and general people who actually make the games we play. Mm-hmm. Who I've seen just in the Fallout just utter shock of this shit. Which is a shame. I mean, it's a shame just in general that the world is so shit and filled with people who do shit things.
Just a reminder to all you youngins watching now, do not for any reason look up to anyone at all.
Especially us. I mean, not that you will have found a reason yet, but if you have, don't.
I have no doubt. There's so many skeletons that we're not telling anyone about at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We're right on the money with foreshadowing being your call thing when you said, when you get cancelled.
Look forward to Vectormen episode. I'm going to be optimistic and say 230, where like people find out what that smell coming from my loft is.
In slightly less tedious news,
Mixer, huh?
Okay, fine. We'll jump into Mixer because
I think it's
Mixer's
the
not
one
tedious.
that I'm probably most prepared to talk about. So I was looking at some statistics earlier in the week that was brought to my attention courtesy of the Castle Super Peace podcast plug.
Okay. There you go.
And it was some statistics regarding how streaming services have fared and the traffic that they've experienced as a result of, the machine uprising, preventing us from going outside.
Of course.
And, YouTube looking good. People watching a lot of YouTube videos. Twitch also looking good. Increased traffic on Twitch.
That's
good. Netflix, streaming services, it's all looking good. Mixer, not only was there no difference, but there was a statistically insignificant decrease in viewership in Mixer.
But this is only like a couple of months after the big Ninja get, isn't it? So I mean, you would have thought they were still holding on to that.
Ninja and the other guy, was it Shroud or something? Man,
Shroud, that's right.
Gotta respect the hustle there they made out of this, looking like bandits.
They call that getting the bag.
I mean, because they got to have their cake and eat it too. I mean, what? They still got all the money that they were paid, and the thing that they were paid to basically shackle themselves to for an extended period of time went under, so they're free to do whatever they want.
Well, they were free to choose, should they join Facebook gaming? Or should they go back to where their audience still held on to not really moving from, which was Twitch.
As it turns out, Shroud and Ninja has poached, headhunted content providers. Weren't even that effective anyway, because all it did result in the people who were already watching Mixer just watching for longer. That is to say, not much of a value get. The numbers, the amount of people using Mixer, didn't increase by any substantial amount at all.
Yeah, I mean, I signed up to check it out at some point.
Wow, you went that far even?
I know, exactly. I needed to get my feet on the ground here to see what the fuck was the appeal. Nothing really. There wasn't anything. And I have receipts that I indeed had a Mixer account. And now I will be able
receipts just in case you ever pulled up to prove it?
Just in case it becomes a part of history. People hold on to
in case the courts put in a subpoena or whatever.
It's like having it's like holding on to
when we get MeToo'd, somehow that ties into all that.
Yeah, of course. It's like holding on to the newspaper on the day that something traumatic happens to the world. You want to be able to frame that.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, it's not quite Dewey defeats Truman, but it's up there, I suppose.
I mean, it just means you can always put it in a bio and it won't be a lie at some point. Yeah, I can always say Lee Brady, Mixer user.
I was there, a kid, when Mixer went down.
I could even say ex-Mixer user, and carry the war-torn cred that would get me.
Put that in the CV.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, who the fuck cares about Mixer?
Well, I can think of some people who care. Two groups in particular. One, all the streamers who had went over to Mixer in order to build up their viewer base, only to discover that their viewer base had vanished overnight because they had heard the news and all buggered off back to Twitch.
That's true.
And even more so, I suppose, shout out to all the boys and girls who worked for Mixer, who found out that it was going down at the same time that the general public did. So that's cool. That's always good.
Okay, you're right. You've taken the more sympathetic route, which is usually my call, so...
Yeah, normally I'm meant to be the outrageous funny one who takes the extreme positions.
Something about you saying that brought Skinner from The Simpsons to mind.
And the wacky zany one.
Someone called you the funny one in the group. Is that correct? Yes. Yes, that is. Yeah, okay. My sympathies with the people on Mixer. Hopefully they can restructure and keep doing what they're doing. Maybe on Facebook Gaming, which probably won't die.
I have to confess, I mostly brought it up partially out of sympathy for the workers, because I like to think I'm, pretty pro-worker, but also that it gives me an opportunity to shit on companies, which is always fun. Always a great joy to do. I mean, you know why they do it, right? It's because it means they get to control the narrative. Because if you tell the workers, they're going to leak it out and suddenly, investors are, bailing, things like that. But it's still pretty shitty as far as treating your workers, for lack of a better word.
That's true.
Tengo 1200 años.
No aparentas más de 12.000. ¡Que te jodan!
¡Que te jodan!
Pokemon Unite. Powered by Tencent.
Yeah, that's the big fucking asterisk next to it, isn't it?
Huh? The bigger asterisk to me is it's a fucking MOBA, and these games I think suck. So that's
I'll admit I'm not a fan, but I see the appeal.
The more frustrating thing about Pokemon Unite isn't anything really to do with the game. It's just the fucking entitlement.
Oh, of people going, put this one in, put this one in, put this one in.
No, they haven't even got that far because they're so against it because it wasn't a Diamond and Pearl remake.
Oh, really? Now, to be clear, is your source for this just YouTube comments? Because I know we're strapped for content, Lee, but that's stretching. That's reaching.
No. This time it rippled out a little further. You can see some stories on it. It was trending on Twitter for the fucking rest of the day. It wasn't Pokemon Unite. It was Sinnoh, like the region from Diamond and Pearl. Mm-hmm. And it was also like Diamond and Pearl sort of broken up, or Gen 4 or whatever it is. A variation of these were at the top of my fucking trending for the remainder of the day. People were just non-stop yammering about this fucking game that they're going to get eventually, but they wanted it today. It's fucking Pokemon. And this is from somebody, to be clear, I still play Pokemon. I've been playing Pokemon. I still have all the fucking Pokemon.
Mm-hmm. You have indeed caught them all.
I've never managed that, but I've done everything but that. And I'm always excited to see these fucking remakes. And to be fair, they are now a very, very real inevitability. Like, you are going to get Diamond and Pearl remake one day or another. Let's just be fucking clear. Mm-hmm. But because somebody in some thread said, it's coming today. And somebody then passed that to the fucking head of the Pokemon community on Twitter or whatever. It just blew the fuck up. And so when Pokemon Company announced their seemingly harmless MOBA game, which is probably shady for its own reasons.
Tencent, dude.
That's a pretty shady reason. And
I mean, how much more shady can you get than being in league with a company that may or may not be apparatus of the Chinese Communist Party?
What's slightly pathetic about it is that there was a backlash to Tencent only after the Sinnoh controversy.
Oh, it's like riding on the coattails of the outrage.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like, and you know what also sucks? Tencent. Whereas when I heard that, I was like, oh, that's fucking creepy. It's like being tainted with original sin, this shit. Mm. And they put a very po-faced, it's all smiles, all corporate about it, about the Tencent's haunting threat of merger with the Pokemon Company.
Yeah, I'm watching the presentation now.
But it certainly wasn't cause for outrage. And Jesus fucking Christ. At least there was some grain of reason behind the Sword and Shield, why aren't all the Pokemon in the game argument. Like, as much as I didn't care personally, I understood and we were all later proven correct about the fact that it was probably a shady way to sell them off, nickel and dime them through DLC, which is what exactly happened. I mean, at the same time, I also approved of that because the best game I could remember from Pokemon in the last while was Pokemon Black and White. And that was because they stripped out all the fucking Pokemon.
Oh, really? Did they?
Yeah, they only had that generation's Pokemon and nothing else in that game. And that played great. Like, that whole game was like, okay, it feels like they've actually tweaked the design of the world to fit the Pokemon they've designed for it this time, and that everything works with the same theme like it did in the original, and has never worked since.
I'm watching footage of this. Is this a mobile game?
It's mobile and Switch game, with crossplay.
Yes, I was wondering, I was like, this looks... There's something about this. I can't it's a mobile game. Ah, gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
It had that thumbprint all over it. Which is probably why Tencent's getting involved.
But that's what I mean. Like, you can also argue, you can see a reason why they might have pawned off production a little bit to a company who are better at it than fucking the Pokemon Company, who, to be fair, they're not even the main they're just the fucking subsidiary of the Pokemon franchise. They don't actually produce anything themselves. They hire companies to do it on their behalf. Tencent is just one that's very popular at making MOBAs and online multiplayer stuff and probably has a better handle of the infrastructure than Pokemon ever will. Mm-hmm. It's just also like that's a name that's starting to build a rash every time I hear it.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's the ever-growing, hey, they got lots of fingers and lots of pies, a worryingly large amount of fingers and an amount of pies. It's like, It's like, it's the same thing with Huawei. And what's the other one? Huawei, Tencent, and there is a third one, isn't there? Oh, TikTok, yes. Where it's like, yep, just gotta get the, Chinese state apparatus just slowly but surely encroaching on everything.
Yep, on every medium.
I mean, I suppose the only room for optimism here is that most of these companies, yes, they work at the behest of the Chinese state, but none of them are really happy about it because it gets in the way of business.
Yeah, they could be true killers of capitalism if they were just they didn't have ulterior motives now and then, like phone tapping and shit like that. That's allegedly.
Allegedly.
See, I like to have you do the real allegedly. I think it's more effective.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm just leaning right into the mic.
Exactly.
So.
Well, that's what I mean. You've already got the sound clip down. Pokemon, whatever. Let's round it out unless you have anything to add with Inception in Fortnite.
Is that even a news story?
That's right. I want to end with a damp thud rather than a bang.
Yeah, a whimper.
Today, day of recording, you could have watched Inception in Fortnite.
But why would you want to? It's like, well, I mean, you say you could have watched it in Fortnite. Do you remember that, there's an interview with David Lynch where he talks about people who watch films on their phones?
Okay. No, I've never seen the interview.
In fact, you know what? I'm just going to link it.
Right.
Now, if you're playing the movie on a telephone, you will never in a trillion years experience the film. You'll think you have experienced it, but you'll be cheated. It's such a sadness that you think you've seen a film on your fucking telephone. Get real.
Thanks, David. Get real.
This is a small spoiler for Shadow of the Colossus. What is wrong with you?
By the way, sorry, on Shadow of the Colossus, I'm going to derail this conversation
Go for
entirely
it.
Once more. But I mean to ask you, so you know Dorman, right?
Yes, the god in Shadow of the Colossus.
So are you pro-Dorman or anti-Dorman?
I don't know shit about Dorman. I liked his fire breath. I got a trophy for using his fire breath, so I felt like, can't hate a guy that, uses fire breath. I was more against him initially when I thought that he was just fucking telling me to do something, like kill these things to get him out, and that was it. But those things that I was killing were technically him, right?
Yeah, right. So the idea is that each Colossus is sort of like a living prison.
Yeah, each Colossus is a
tied.
fraction of Dorman and has been chained up. And under that pretense, and the way that they managed to somehow soup him up into a well afterwards, it doesn't seem like he's maybe all-powerful in some description or inevitable, like in a Ganondorf sort of way. But I didn't necessarily get the impression that he was the most legitimate of evils when the guys who are against him are like a cult of warriors that look after him or something, and that they did such a poor job.
I basically, from the moment I finished that game, I was in the pro-Dorman camp basically all the way. Because, Wander turns up, he's like, I want you to resurrect this girl, and Dorman's like, whoa, well, okay, I'll do it, but I have to warn you, there's going to be some consequence. And Wander cuts him off like, don't worry, I'm going to do it anyway. And Dorman's like, oh, okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Here's what you gotta do. And you know what, Dorman? That's a level of warning that Mephistopheles would have never given you.
It's very true. It is true.
So
you're under the impression, I feel, from the start that Wanderer doesn't want to know, or doesn't really know what he's in for. But it becomes very clear at the end. Everybody's like, this kid was so set on obeying or doing this that he even pretty much convinced this god, to give him the details so that he could do it for him. And that I was kind of frustrated with as a player, thinking I was being misled. But at the end, it's like, it's very clear that you haven't been misled. You've been directly doing this for your reasons, and you knew what was entailed.
No, Dorman tried to warn you, which is something that most,
Yeah.
Faustian bargains probably wouldn't do. A genie wouldn't warn you. Dorman warned you, and you chose not to listen. And you know what? See at the very end, when he takes over your body and tries to fight off all the guys unsuccessfully, guess what? He still gets sealed away, but he still keeps his end of the bargain, and he resurrects you in a sort of kind of fashion. So you know what?
Yeah.
I'm pretty pro Dorman. Dorman's a cool guy, as far as I'm concerned.
If anything, you should be really anti-Wanderer, and that's about it.
You do right by Dorman, and Dorman will do right by you. He's in my book. He's a good guy. this massive ancient demon. He's all right by me.
If we could do subtitles on the podcast, I think "Do Right by Dorman" is a pretty good one.
Yeah. You know what? Dorman 2020. He's my vote. Presidential candidate.